Chapter 1. You're going to aid Africa? All because Luis came home an hour late. Clara's shout made everyone stop in their tracks. Emma, my mind is made up. Clara hesitated. Luis, the man who never attends social gatherings, always comes home by 7 p.m. and practically wants to be glued to your side 24/7, is he really going to agree to lose contact with you for a long time? That was exactly what she wanted, to cut off contact. Best if Luis could never find her again. The interns in the lab were all in shock. Did I hear that right? Senior Kim is leaving Senior Han to go aid Africa? Don't talk nonsense. Senior Han almost died chasing her back then. They got married right after graduation. Handsome man, beautiful woman. Everyone envied them. Their photos are still pinned on the university forum, topping the trending list for years. They're a living legend of Jing University. At the last school speech, Senior Han had a frosty face the whole time. But the moment he got backstage, he wouldn't let go of Senior Kim, looking completely love-struck. It made me blush just watching. In any case, divorce is absolutely impossible. Emma listened silently, without saying a word. Everyone knew that the cold and stern President Han gave all his lifetime tenderness to one person, Emma. Emma was his everything, the only weakness under his armor. But the truth was, even a man like Luis, who loved her as if she were his life, would one day show all his tenderness to another woman. 10 days ago, a mysterious video appeared on her phone. In an elevator, Luis had his hand wrapped around a woman's neck, kissing her aggressively. The video was short, but the fleeting flash of his wedding ring on his hand made her heart sink halfway. In the end, she deleted the video and chose to believe Luis. But when the food had gone cold, Luis finally sent a text. Sorry babe, working late tonight. The clock on the wall had just passed 7. Her heart sank the rest of the way. For the first time, he hadn't come home at 7 on the dot. That video played on repeat in her mind. She didn't even remember how she got to his office. She searched around the office, but there was not a single trace of anyone. She breathed a sigh of relief, a kind of escape from death sort of gratitude. Suddenly, a loud bang exploded on the rooftop. Brilliant fireworks lit the sky like some grand alarm. She stepped onto the rooftop, and what she saw burned into her eyes. Luis pressing a woman against a concrete wall, their clothes scattered across the floor. Stay still. Don't move. Then, that peach-shaped body began to ripple with motion. Emma stood behind the door, frozen, watching the entangled figures. The air felt thick, choking her breath. The fireworks above were like the cold glint of a surgical blade, slicing into her already bleeding heart. She stared ahead blankly. Do you like it? Lit just for you. Luis's Adam's apple bobbed as he planted a tender kiss on the woman's shoulder. That moment shattered Emma's once happy life, exposing the filth underneath. Clara saw her face turn pale, worried. She said, "Don't be upset. I'm not trying to stop you from going. It's just that President Han said the lab work is intense and he's worried it will take a toll on your health." A flicker of guilt flashed in Clara's eyes. Emma caught it instantly. She glanced around. The place was already crawling with Luis's admirers. From a poor student to a corporate giant, Luis's influence was now everywhere. Emma took off her ring and handed it to Clara. Clara, help me one last time. Clara looked at the ring in her hand and finally realized what was going on. Just as silence fell, Luis called, "Babe, I brought your favorite desserts. Dinner's French cuisine, your favorite. Afterward, we can go to the concert." His gentle, meticulous words wrapped in a deep magnetic voice made people melt without realizing it. The nearby interns all sighed. So sweet! Who would believe this is the cold-faced CEO Luis? Emma gave a bitter smile. Over the years, Luis's devoted persona had really taken root in everyone's hearts. But if he loved her, why did he cheat again and again? Every night he spent with someone else, who knew she was in agony, wishing she were dead. Another message popped up on her phone. She tapped it open, and her eyes instantly reddened. She scrolled through the photos, tormenting herself with each one, images of Luis and another woman intimately close. In the 9th photo, Luis leaned in and kissed the woman's tender lips. Their fingers were intertwined, and the silver gleam of his wedding ring became the most blinding highlight in the entire shot. The ring is beautiful. Thank you, dear Mr. Han. I really love it. Chapter 2. Outside, heavy snow was falling, and the relentless cold wind swept in, She felt like her body could never get warm again. As dizziness overtook her, Clara caught her in her arms. In that moment, she was shocked. How could someone feel as light as a sheet of paper? On the other end of the line, Luis grew frantic when he heard no response. "Babe, what's wrong? Don't scare me. I'm almost there." Moments later, Luis burst in with the chill of winter still clinging to him. At the sight of Emma, he rushed forward but forced himself to stop abruptly, worried she'd catch cold. He quickly shrugged off his coat. Once he confirmed she was all right, he finally dared to pull her into his arms. His voice trembling, "I was wrong. I came too late. Emma, I'm sorry." The man's tall frame enclosed her, his arms pulling her so tightly it was as if he wanted to fuse her into his very bones. She gazed out the window at the snow. It looked just like the snowfall from 10 years ago. When they first met, she had been 18, out on a self-driving trip. When she encountered a shivering Luis in the snow, a car ahead had skidded and knocked over the stall where he was selling scarves. White scarves scattered across the ground. The driver who caused the crash insulted him as a broke nobody, slammed the accelerator, and drove away. The young Luis bowed his head, silently bent his thin frame, and used his red, frostbitten hands to gather the fallen items. Emma rolled down her car window. "Curious, how much is this?" The boy straightened up, surprisingly tall. He paused for a moment when his jet-black eyes met hers, then replied softly, 20 yuan each. Emma smiled. "Give me 11. I'm giving them as gifts." He picked out the cleanest 11 scarves and carefully handed them through the window. Emma pulled out a navy blue one. "This one's for you. Happy New Year." As her car slowly pulled away, the rearview mirror captured the boy's thin figure. He stood on the roadside, gazing long into the flowing stream of cars, like a solitary pine in the snow. When they met again at university, Luis recognized her instantly. To save her, he charged into a burning lab at great risk to his own life. That day, the whole school knew Luis loved Emma enough to die for her. After marriage, Luis spoiled and adored her, managing every part of her life. Emma had even thrown a fit over it once and ran away from home. That night, Luis turned the entire city of A upside down looking for her. She softened. When she came back, Luis, who hadn't slept a wink, rushed over and hugged her tightly, his voice filled with fear. "I'm sorry. Baby, please forgive me. I'll never do it again." His eyes had been red from crying. Even in his sleep, he murmured her name. But now, everything had changed. On the way home, Luis held her hand tightly, not even letting go while driving. As soon as they entered the house, he pulled out a hidden ring box from his pocket. Inside was an ornate, vintage aquamarine ring. Emma's pupils contracted, as if she'd been shocked. Luis, unaware, gently slipped the ring onto her finger. "Babe, I love you so much. I want to marry you again every year. Let's be together, lifetime after lifetime." Then he gave her a tender kiss. The warmth from his lips lingered on her hand, but Emma felt a cold wind tearing through her chest. He had given her the exact same ring he gave his mistress. And now he was saying he loved her deeply? Had he whispered these same sweet words to another woman 100 times already? Luis, having finished putting on the ring, pulled her into his arms. A hot kiss followed. His breathing grew heavier and rougher. Emma pushed him away, fighting back her tears. "I'm tired. I want to rest." Suppressing his desire, Luis leaned in, pressing a hand to her forehead. Voice hoarse, "Did you catch a cold? Does your head hurt?" His collar shifted slightly. There, on his collarbone, was a fresh hickey, bright and blatant. Her heart twisted in agony, fresh from another woman's bed. And now he couldn't wait to make love to her? What did he take her for? Emma turned away, nauseous, avoiding his touch. Luis froze, at a loss. "Maybe my hands are cold. I'll shower and then hold you to sleep." But it wasn't just his hands, her whole heart had gone cold. Thunder and lightning crashed outside. She crawled into bed. In her foggy mind, she dreamt of her mother. She had reached out a tiny hand, begging her terminally ill mother not to go. The last bolt of lightning struck. Her mother had closed her eyes forever. Since then, she had feared thunderstorms deeply. Half asleep, she saw Luis hurriedly getting dressed, as if something urgent had come up. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe she really was sick. She tugged on his sleeve and asked in a soft voice, "Can you stay with me tonight?" Her eyes were full of plea and confusion, stirring pity in anyone who saw. Luis's heart clenched. Just as he was about to respond, a message came in. "I clipped my nail too deep, it bled. I need hubby's hug to feel better." Luis's face went cold as he replied, "Behave. Don't make a fuss." But a call came through immediately. Luis rubbed his temples in frustration, thinking of Lisa's temper. If he didn't go tonight, there would be no peace at all. With that, Luis held Emma's hand, kissed her forehead, and coaxed her gently, "Be good. Emma, there's an emergency at work. I'll ask Juan Ma to come keep you company." The kiss was brief and detached. He pulled away and closed the door behind him. Emma's hand fell weakly. Her trembling shoulders showed the weight she was bearing. Enough. She didn't want him anymore. Curling under the covers, she trembled alone as thunder raged outside. In the dark, her phone lit up. She opened it. Lisa had posted a selfie. A towering man burying his face in her neck from behind. "Twisted my ankle. Hubby rushed to buy medicine and apply it for me. Gonna reward him real good tonight." Chapter 3. Tears blurred her vision as she bit down hard on the blanket. Amid the thunder and rain, she kept calling out, "Mom. Mom," as if only that could dull the searing pain tearing through her chest. She was awakened at dawn by a kiss. The man's movements were gentle and restrained, whispering in her ear, "Happy birthday, baby. I love you." Beside her lay a huge bouquet of fresh flowers. But to Emma, it felt like she had just swallowed a fly. Luis saw the paleness on her face and panicked. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Are you feeling unwell? We'll go to the hospital right away." He immediately called the company. "Cancel all my meetings today." Everyone was shocked. "President, we've all worked 3 months without rest for today's merger project. And now at this crucial moment, you..." Luis cut them off sharply. "Cut the crap. Just do it." No one could ever compare to Emma in his heart. Luis held her hand tightly, deeply worried about her. Suddenly, Lisa volunteered on the phone. "President Han, I'm familiar with the process. I can lead today's merger meeting. If you're worried, you can supervise the entire session." Others quickly objected. How could a secretary overstep like that? Luis fell silent amid the objections. Then he made the final call. "Fine, you lead. I'll monitor everything." The room went silent. Emma looked at Luis, eyes full of disappointment. On the way, Luis kept his eyes glued to the video feed of Lisa, watching her handle everything with poise. His eyes were full of admiration and a kind of love he didn't even realize was showing. Emma saw it all, the passionate love of youth, the open-hearted devotion, all of it now seemed naive and laughable. Luis didn't look away even once, occasionally chiming in to prompt progress. When the deal was signed, he lifted his hand to capture screenshots of Lisa's moments of glory. Smiling, he sent her a message. "You did great. For Emma's birthday party tonight, I picked your favorite red roses. Just think of it as your own celebration." In that moment, his smile became a venomous curse, trapping Emma in an inescapable nightmare. Love, in the end, was nothing but lies and betrayal. The merger was a success, and they successfully made it to her birthday banquet. When the two of them entered hand in hand, countless spotlights lit up. What a loving couple. I heard President Han even gave up the merger project today just for his wife. They say being love-struck is the best dowry a man can bring. Mrs. Han is truly blessed. Blessed? She used to think so too. But when she saw Lisa today, she understood. True love is about sacrificing yourself to help the other grow, not caging someone in your world and calling it protection. Unknowingly, she had fallen a step behind Luis, looking more like his secretary than his wife. Lisa approached with the CEO of the partner company. President Lee smiled warmly and extended his hand. "President Han, your wife led the entire merger beautifully, intelligent and elegant. Truly enviable." Luis froze. He had mistaken the identity. "President Lee, you must be mistaken. My wife is Ms. Emma." He quickly corrected. He pulled Emma close, his expression gentle. "In this life, I will only ever have one wife, Emma. Please don't get that wrong." Lisa's face changed instantly. President Lee smiled awkwardly, but only Emma could see the truth. The way Luis slowed his breathing, the way he avoided Lisa's gaze, it all screamed he was lying. Emma forced herself to smile graciously and shook hands with President Lee. Welcome to China. President Lee, if there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to let me know. The atmosphere eased slightly. Luis also regained his composure and invited President Lee to discuss the contract follow-ups. Lisa, watching Emma turn the situation around with a few words, darkened. Then she smiled again and said, "Your ring is beautiful. It's exactly the same as mine." That must be what caused the confusion. She deliberately touched her ring, face full of bliss. "This ring was a gift from my fiancé. Last week, we went to Hokkaido, and under the cherry blossoms, he proposed to me." Emma froze, staring at her. Lisa went on, "We can't get married just yet, but he said I'm the one he loves most in this life. Everyone else was just a compromise. He also said only I can give him the kind of pleasure no one else can." Emma felt her heart being torn apart. While she was suffering, tossing and turning in pain, he and his mistress were wrapped in love. He had never taken her to Hokkaido, but for Lisa, he gave her all the romance and tenderness. Lisa savored the look of pain on her face. Then suddenly, her expression shifted as she stumbled into the cake table. In an instant, the floor was a mess. She looked up, eyes red with grievance. "Mrs. Han, I didn't mean to ruin your birthday party. It's just that I've been so busy with the merger project lately. I must have gotten careless. Please be gracious and don't hold it against me." As soon as she spoke, sympathy poured in from the crowd. Their eyes toward Emma turned curious, almost judging. Luis rushed over when he heard the commotion. Seeing Lisa covered in frosting, his face darkened. "Who gave you the courage to touch my woman?" Chapter 4. No one dared to speak. Emma clenched her fists so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. Luis looked around. With that one sentence, every gaze shifted to Emma. Luis narrowed his eyes slightly. Then, unexpectedly, he raised his hand and grabbed Lisa by the throat. Everyone gasped in shock. Lisa panicked, clawing at his hand and struggling. "President Han." And no, her face turned crimson from the pressure before he finally let go. Lisa collapsed weakly to the ground. Luis didn't even glance at her. He calmly wiped his hand clean. Then he walked back to Emma, gently took her hand, and nuzzled her like a cat. "Baby, are you okay? Were you scared?" Lisa's face turned as pale as a sheet. "President Han, why?" Luis finally acknowledged her on the floor. Speaking coldly, "You just achieved a little, and already you're arrogant. Who gave you that kind of nerve?" "Secretary Bai, you've seriously overestimated yourself. I don't want to see you for now. Go follow up on the project in France. If you can't deliver results, resign on your own." Everyone present believed, without a doubt, Luis truly loved Emma deeply. But only Emma knew the truth. The French project was of great importance. It had originally been her brainchild. Now Luis handed it to Lisa. It looked like he was standing up for Emma, but in reality, he was paving the way for Lisa. Lisa wanted ambition, he gave her a cross-border merger to lead. Lisa wanted to chase dreams, he took her through the cities of B, J, N, even Hokkaido, a place he never took Emma to. He went there with Lisa first. Emma lowered her head, stubbornly holding back tears. After that, Luis stayed by Emma's side the whole time, but his gaze frequently drifted toward Lisa, who sat drinking alone in a dark corner. When a strange man went to support Lisa as she staggered outside, Luis crushed his wine glass in his hand, forcing himself to remain calm. He forced a smile. "Excuse me, I need to use the restroom." Emma watched from the crowd, eyes tracking him. Luis followed the two, and when no one was around, he yanked Lisa into his arms and carried her away. The man beside Lisa was about to protest, but Luis's cold, intense eyes made him back down. "President Han, leave." With that, he walked out of the banquet hall with the half-drunken Lisa in his arms. Emma clenched her fists until pain radiated through her. President Lee, standing nearby, gently reminded her, "Mrs. Han, your hand is bleeding. Would you like some help?" Emma forced a bitter smile. Even outsiders had noticed her injury, yet the man beside her hadn't seen a thing. Swallowing her heartache, she replied with a smile, "Excuse me, I'll go take care of it." She turned a corner and then, a familiar voice drifted over. "You silly thing, don't 9,999 roses prove how sincere I am? Do I really have to crack open my heart for you to believe me?" The woman sobbed, complaining. You choked me earlier, it really hurt. Luis caught her hand and kissed it over and over. Delicate little thing. He hadn't wanted to make a scene earlier, which was why he had stepped in himself, and now he was making it up to her. For the French project, all she had to do was show up and go through the motions. His woman was meant to be pampered. Luis wrapped his arm around her waist and pushed her inside. Be good. Let me love on you. Emma stood in the hallway where the wind howled through. Her heart had a gaping hole, and the cold wind rushed in without end. No matter how deep the love had once been, it had frozen solid. She dragged her exhausted body home. On Lisa's private account, a new update appeared. A man knelt to massage a woman's feet, a bright ring gleaming on her ankle, and the background was littered with luxury items. Stood for 2 hours. Since hubby worked so hard, I'll forgive him for now, but he still owes me a birthday cake. Emma stared at the exposed half of the man's face. Tears streamed down without her even realizing. By evening, Luis barely made it home by 7. He had changed into a new suit, crisp and polished, the image of a successful elite. As usual, he bent down and gave her a kiss. She looked at that face, handsome and refined, as it had been for 10 years. Time had only made him more captivating. Emma tightened her grip on the phone and exhaled deeply. Luis, if a man is willing to bow his head for a woman, what kind of love is that? Luis casually replied, probably true love. Emma felt a sharp stab in her heart. Her hand, hidden in her sleeve, dug so hard into her palm that blood oozed out. Luis didn't notice a thing. He took off his jacket, unbuttoned 2 buttons, and naturally wrapped his arms around her. Should I pamper you for once too? A nice bath and a change of clothes? He was spotless, no cologne, not even a trace of scent, and it was exactly that which made her suspicious. Emma held back her pain and pushed him away. Keeping calm, I already washed. Luis looked at his now empty hands, feeling something odd. His gaze flickered, deep and unreadable, seemingly able to see through her soul. Emma thought he had figured it out, but then he smiled and nuzzled her palm like a child. Baby, I'll love you forever, so you must never leave me. Chapter 5. At that moment, she truly believed Luis had discovered something, but in the following days, he continued going to work as usual, gave her his routine morning kisses, and just as routinely, cheated. To make up for it, Luis lied to Lisa, claiming he had to work overtime, while he was actually out fooling around. They even got creative with it. In the photo, the cake was smeared all over the woman's body. The man's sculpted figure pressed against hers as he tasted her. Inch by inch, the caption read, "Warm up the cake, then feed it to your husband." Emma's hands trembled as she held the phone, a bitter smile tugging at her lips, her eyes welling with tears. The heartbreak made it hard to breathe. When had things changed? Late-night texts, the occasional suspicious calls, increasingly late hours at work, 10 years of love, ultimately no match for the inferior instincts hardwired in his genes, greed and a thrill for the illicit. The housekeeper quietly reminded her, "Ma'am, would you like to have your meal now? Let's wait a bit longer." That wait stretched into full darkness. The food grew cold again. The clock passed 7. The man she had once loved deeply came home, looking fully satisfied, and finally walked through the door. Luis casually handed over his briefcase and only then noticed her sitting on the sofa. "Babe?" Emma looked at him. Beneath that handsome face was a soul already rotted and blackened. The boy she once loved had become a stranger. When Luis saw the cold food on the table, his face turned cold and he snapped at the housekeeper, "Is this how you take care of my wife? The Han family isn't paying you to slack off. If this happens again, you're all fired." He erupted with uncharacteristic fury. Was he truly concerned about her, or was it just a show, trying to cover up his panic? Emma lowered her gaze, no longer willing to dwell on it. Luis grasped her hand, his face full of concern. "Babe, are you hungry? Let me make you something." As he leaned in, Emma couldn't hold back her nausea. Luis panicked, a grown man, nearly in tears. "Babe, I'll take you to the hospital right now." He rushed her out, speeding all the way, and it wasn't until the next morning that things finally settled down. Still worried, Luis took time off to stay by her side. Early the next morning, unable to find him, Lisa showed up at the hospital, Luis was carefully peeling an apple for Emma when Lisa appeared at the door. Emma and she locked eyes. Luis sitting between them. The woman before her had shed her usual delicate demeanor, her gaze direct and unwavering. Emma picked up a slice of pear and said calmly, "Secretary Bai is here to see you." Luis didn't move. He finished peeling the last slice with steady hands. Then, after gently wiping Emma's mouth, he finally spoke. Unhurriedly, "Secretary Bai, I'm not working today. Didn't you get the memo?" Lisa stood with a folder in her hands, her eyes glossy. "There's an urgent document that needs your signature." Luis's expression darkened. He didn't bother to soften his tone. "No matter how urgent it is, nothing is more important than my wife. If you don't understand that, there's no place for you at Hancorp." Lisa bit her lip, trying hard not to cry. In a trembling voice, she said, "I'll be reassigned soon. You won't see me again, and I won't upset you anymore." Luis's hand trembled as he peeled, cutting his finger. Blood oozed from his fingertip. Calmly, he grabbed a tissue and wiped it. Seeing no reaction from him, Lisa sniffled and whispered with wounded dignity, "Then I won't disturb you any further." Only Emma noticed he was faking composure. Sure enough, the moment Lisa left, Luis said, "I'm going to take care of some work. I'll be right back." Watching his eager back as he chased after her, Emma bit down on her lip, barely holding back the searing pain in her chest. She numbly walked to the window. Downstairs, Luis had a blank expression. The woman in his arms cried like a delicate flower in the rain. Emma quietly started recording. "You don't want me anymore, do you? You think I'm not good enough." Lisa sobbed. Luis's cold voice rang out, "You've crossed the line. Who gave you permission to show up in front of my wife? If she finds out, I won't spare you." Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes. She pulled out a test report. I'm pregnant." Luis froze. He grabbed her shoulders and spoke, word by word. "What did you say?" Startled by his reaction, Lisa quickly shook her head, tears falling. "Don't worry. I'll resign on my own. I won't mess up your life." At that, Luis stared at her in silence. After a long pause, he sighed, "Stay. I need this child, and I can't let you go through this alone." Lisa broke into tears of joy, hugging him. "I knew it. You still care about me." Luis stroked her cheek. "Good girl. Go home for now." Lisa pouted playfully. "When will you come see me and the baby?" Luis leaned down and kissed her cheek. "Soon." Chapter 6. That very day, Luis used the excuse of urgent work at the company and didn't come back all night. She sat alone in the vast hospital room, the air around her pressed in like a rising tide. Clutching her chest, her eyes bloodshot, she felt suffocated. Until the age of 28, everything in her life had gone smoothly. Academics, career, family, everything was in her favor. Everyone said she was destined to be a rising star. But no matter how bright a star was, once it fell into a swamp of lies and greed, it could no longer shine. He had once claimed she was more important to him than life itself. Yet even the deepest love could change in an instant. Emma's heart ached, numbed by sorrow. Seeing her tears, the nurse rushed over. "You can't cry, you're pregnant. There's a risk of miscarriage. Please, you must not cry again." Emma froze, stunned in disbelief. She had always suffered from a cold womb, making it incredibly difficult to conceive. Back when she married Luis, she'd told him, but he had said he didn't care, that all he wanted in this life was her, and her alone. The nurse looked around in confusion. "Where's your husband?" "Earlier, he was beside himself with worry." "Where'd he run off to now?" Emma lowered her head, a bitter smile playing on her lips. Soon, the day of discharge arrived. After packing up, the housekeeper mumbled, "Strange, such an important day. Why didn't Mr. Luis come to pick you up?" Emma heard it and gave a cold chuckle. He was already so intoxicated with the other woman. He probably no longer remembered the one he once vowed to cherish. "Babe." Luis came running in, breathless. The always composed and reserved man now had reddened eyes, staring intently at her belly. He came closer and knelt down, pressing his ear gently against her abdomen, looking like he was about to cry. The next second, a tear dropped onto the back of her hand. He embraced her, and the emotion in his eyes looked unmistakably real. His voice choked with feeling. Babe, I swear. From now on I'll treat you and our baby 100 times better. If it had been before, Emma would have believed him without hesitation. But after having her trust trampled time and again, his words now carried zero weight. After returning home, Luis indeed kept his word, handling everything personally. To celebrate the news, the Han Corporation announced a citywide release of sky lanterns to pray for blessings and donated a staggering 1 billion yuan to charity. The trending searches were flooded with praise about President Han's deep love for his wife. Emma read through each comment one by one. The phone was gently taken from her hand. Luis smiled as he caressed her belly. Try not to look at screens too much, it's not good for you. She looked at the man before her, whose face was lit with happiness. His gaze was full of affection, but if he truly loved her, how could he have let another woman get pregnant? How about I take you shopping later to relax a bit? Emma was about to reply when his phone rang. It was Luis's. His body stiffened slightly, and he quickly rejected the call. Emma already had a good guess who it was. Not going to answer? Luis smiled. Just a call, that doesn't matter. Emma smiled too, but the way his hand tightened instinctively told a different story. The call came several more times. Luis declined each one. But once the heart is disturbed, peace becomes impossible. By the 11th time he zoned out. Emma suggested visiting his office. Luis looked puzzled but agreed. As soon as they arrived at the company, Luis couldn't help but speed ahead. Then suddenly remembering Emma, he halted and turned back. Sorry. He reached out again to hold her hand. Emma followed behind silently. The elevator took them straight up. When the doors opened, they were greeted with the sight of a young, handsome man wiping tears from Lisa's face. Luis's expression turned terrifyingly dark. His voice carried an oppressive weight. What are you doing? Chapter 7. Lisa kept her head down, her voice thick with emotion. She looked utterly devastated. The male colleague beside her summoned his courage and stammered. President Han, I wasn't talking to you. Luis cut him off harshly, completely disregarding everyone else in the room. Emma had never seen him so sharp and furious. Lisa had initially felt glad to see him arrive, but when she spotted Emma standing behind him, she suddenly snapped. My boyfriend's gone missing. I don't feel like working, President Han. I'd like to request a few days off. The moment the words left her mouth, the male colleague broke into a cold sweat for her. Boyfriend? Emma instinctively turned to Luis. Yet not only was he not angry, his expression actually softened. Secretary, bye. This is work hours. Please don't bring your personal emotions into the office. Lisa's eyes were red, her nose slightly twitching like a scolded little animal. But I really feel awful. As she spoke, her gaze lingered on Luis for a few extra seconds. Emma clenched her fists, wanting to see if he would reject her. Seeing Lisa's pitiful face, Luis's heart involuntarily softened. His tone relaxed. Take 3 days off. Just this once. Lisa's face lit up with joy, but Emma felt like she was falling into a bottomless abyss. He had always been ruthless about work, but today, to appease his mistress, he bent the rules. Back at the office, barely a few minutes had passed before Lisa came in with 2 cups of coffee. President Han, Madam, I brought you some coffee. Luis didn't even look up. She can't have coffee. Bring her juice instead. Lisa froze mid-step. As she turned, she let her fingers deliberately graze the back of his hand under the cover of the coffee tray. Luis slowly lifted his head, his sharp eyes locking onto her until she left the room. Emma blinked. Just before the tears could fall, she turned and fled. You go ahead with your work. I'll go for a walk. Luis seemed to come to his senses and got up to follow her. But the next second, his eyes darkened suddenly. Lisa, who had been waiting outside, walked in, looking nervous and cautious, her tearful eyes brimming with fragile seduction. President Han. Luis's gaze grew increasingly shadowed. Halfway down the hall, Emma realized she'd forgotten her phone. When she returned, she found the door locked. She knocked. Inside, Luis's cold, sharp voice rang out. I said no interruptions. Emma froze, then forced a strained smile. It's me, Luis. After a pause, the electronic lock clicked open. Inside, the curtains were drawn, and the lighting was dim. Luis removed his Bluetooth earpiece. With a hint of apology, he said, Sorry, babe. I was in a meeting, I didn't realize it was you. Emma smiled faintly, scanning the room. No one else was inside. Was it just her imagination? She said casually, "Is this how you usually talk to your subordinates?" Luis gave a soft laugh. "My tenderness is for you alone. What do others matter to me?" In the dim light, she couldn't read his expression, but he felt more unreadable than ever. Suddenly, a low groan slipped from his throat. She frowned. "What's wrong?" He clenched and then relaxed his hand, then murmured after a few seconds, "Maybe I'm just too tired, feeling a little dizzy. Sorry, babe. I might not be able to take you shopping today." In the past, Emma would have felt sorry for him, but now, she simply couldn't. Emma took a sip of her juice, set the glass down, and stood up. "Then I won't disturb you. Get some rest." His Adam's apple bobbed, as if he were suppressing something. A trace of guilt flashed across his face. "Text me when you're home. I'll be thinking of you." Just before leaving, she glanced back. The man was reclining in his chair, head tilted back, his Adam's apple exposed. A sliver of sunlight shone on his flickering face. His chest rose and fell, as if he were holding back something intense. Suddenly, it all became clear. Emma pried the door slightly open. The large desk obscured some of her view, but she saw enough. Luis's head was bowed. A pale, slender hand emerged from under the desk, and a woman, her body serpentine, slid up from between his legs. Luis's veins bulged, his control breaking. He gripped the woman's slender neck and kissed her fiercely on the lips. The sounds of wet, frantic kissing echoed in the room. Emma couldn't breathe. Her heart felt like it was splitting into 1,000 pieces. It felt unreal, like everything she was seeing was some kind of illusion. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. Lisa, flushed and breathless, lay against him, whispering, "Wasn't that thrilling just now?" Luis gripped her waist tightly but said nothing. Lisa, seeing his silence, began to cry again. "You're going to make me get rid of the baby, aren't you? Now that your wife is pregnant too. You must not want mine. I knew it. You were just playing with me, saying things to string me along." Luis watched her cry and gently wiped her face. "No, I'll give this child the same status." Chapter 8. Emma gently let go of the curtain. Snowflakes had begun to fall outside the window. She stared out, feeling as though she, too, had been swallowed by the endless flurry. The layers of snow seemed to press down on her, burying her in a deep, icy void. She wiped away her tears and typed out a short message. The reply came swiftly, "Departure in 3 days." On time. She touched her belly gently. "I'm sorry, baby. From now on, it's just you and mommy." After a long, snowy night, she awoke to the sound of Luis on the phone. "No, I can't today. I'm taking my wife for her prenatal checkup. I'll go with you tomorrow." "Don't be so moody." The caller switched to a video call. Luis glanced at the sleeping Emma, then walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and pulled back the curtain. Lisa was standing downstairs, looking pitiful and aggrieved. "But I want the baby's father with me too. I won't cause trouble. Just let me come along, okay? Or are you planning to abandon me again?" Seeing her standing in the snowstorm, Luis's heart softened. "The house, the shares, the car, I'll have the assistant transfer them to your name. Now you can rest easy." Still, Lisa didn't look happy. "But the baby kicked me today. Don't you want to feel it?" Under the covers, Emma bit her lip so hard it nearly bled. After a long silence, Luis finally seemed to give in. "But don't say anything inappropriate in front of her." Emma turned over, tears slipping from the corner of her eye. Seeing she was awake, Luis quickly turned his phone away and smiled at her, bright and carefree. "You're up. Come downstairs for breakfast. I made your favorite soup dumplings myself." For a moment, she felt like she saw that sincere young man she once loved, but she knew it was long gone. As she descended the stairs, Lisa was already seated on the sofa. She stood up with a touch of restraint and greeted them. "Good morning, President Hahn, Mrs. Hahn." Luis merely gave a bland nod, his face unreadable. One could never guess how wild things were between them in private. Emma carefully masked her emotions and asked casually, "Weren't you on leave?" Lisa stumbled over her words. In the end, Luis stepped forward, wrapped his arm around Emma, and smiled. Don't mind her. Let's eat first. Lisa's eyes filled with hurt, her head drooping. Luis turned to her. What are you standing there for? Eat, or people will think Corp mistreats its employees. At the table, Emma could barely eat, seeing how little she touched her food. Luis grew worried and muttered about consulting a doctor. Lisa watched the couple's tender interactions and angrily jabbed at a soup dumpling. It had started to snow again outside when the car arrived. Luis personally opened the door for Emma, but Lisa instinctively climbed in first. Only after sitting did she realize. Sorry. She fumbled for words, unable to explain. Luis's face darkened. Get out. Emma, standing to the side, saw everything clearly. They say the passenger seat belongs only to a man's wife, judging by how natural Lisa was. Who knew what else had happened between them in that seat? Standing in the snow, Emma felt a wave of nausea. She felt disgusted. No need. I'll sit in the back. Luis gave Lisa a glance. In the end, he didn't insist. Lisa climbed out. The three of them set off. The whole ride, Lisa chattered nonstop. Luis didn't seem to mind. The car was spotless, leaving no trace of anyone else. Emma glanced at him through the mirror. Luis sat upright, silent and composed, every gesture polished and restrained. But in her mind, she couldn't stop the scenes from resurfacing. Him and Lisa entangled, heat and desire rising in waves. The suffocating feeling returned. Babe, are you okay? Luis looked worried, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Suddenly, a blinding light flashed. A screeching brake, a deafening crash. The world spun. Luis yanked the wheel, instinctively shielding the person beside him, leaving Emma alone in the cold back seat. She forced her eyes open and saw her husband curled over another woman. Luis held Lisa tightly, trembling, until he confirmed she was unharmed. Only then did he turn, eyes wide, face stricken, panic flooding in. His voice broke, filled with terror and remorse. Babe! So he did remember. There was still someone else in the car. Chapter 9. The sharp scent of disinfectant filled the air. Clara rushed in, eyes red, and hugged her tightly. Emma endured the searing pain and reached for her belly. The baby was gone. A stinging ache burned behind her eyes. Her only bloodline in this world, gone. Clara choked through tears. At least you're safe. Don't think about anything else. Her voice was hoarse. Where's Luis? Clara hesitated, then handed her a phone. After you were out of danger, he climbed 9,999 steps through the snow, praying for the child who died too soon. When you wouldn't wake up, he knelt in the snow for a full day and night, begging the heavens for your safe return. Online, images of Luis kneeling in the snow dominated the trending topics. The caption read, "Only a love undying is worthy of the snow weighing on his shoulders." Emma glanced at it, expression unreadable. Undying love? What a joke. Instinct never lies. The truth is, in the very first moment of crisis, he chose to protect Lisa, risking your life for love. Luis had done it 10 years ago, and 10 years later, he did it again. Only now, the one he protected wasn't her. Emma quietly closed her eyes. Clara looked at her frail figure, heart aching. The investigation showed that during the crash, Luis turned the wheel and used his full strength to shield the person in the passenger seat. When Clara first heard, she couldn't believe it. That was Luis, who once loved Emma more than anything in the world. Not long after, Luis stumbled into the room, breath ragged. His eyes were sunken, stubble covering his jaw. The man who once stood tall and proud now looked utterly defeated. He stepped forward, wanting to touch her hand, then hesitated, afraid to hurt her. In the end, eyes rimmed with red, voice rasping, he crouched at her bedside. Emma, don't be afraid. I'll always be here. Snow still clung to his coat, unmelted and thick. Kneeling in the same snow, we'll grow old together. He was telling Emma he regretted it. Regretted not protecting her. Regretted letting her lose their child. Regretted his greed, his lust for excitement. But regret was the most useless thing in the world. Love, when new and burning bright, always comes with promises. And when that love fades, those promises rot like paper in the rain. In the days that followed, Luis did everything himself to care for Emma, feeding her water, changing dressings, trimming her nails, reading bedtime stories every night. At night, he held her tightly, speaking in a voice as gentle as water. Emma, it's all my fault. From now on, I'll never leave your side. I'll love you, always, okay? He gently touched her belly again, pain flashing in his eyes. Emma, I only want you for the rest of my life. You're all I have. Please, don't leave me. Doctors and nurses alike sighed in admiration. A man this devoted, it's rare these days. Emma listened quietly, her response indifferent. Once something is broken, no matter how well it's pieced back together, the cracks never vanish. When she had recovered slightly, Lisa showed up, radiant and confident. She walked in and scanned Emma from head to toe. You lost the baby. Shouldn't you give up the title of Mrs. Hahn? She flung open her coat, deliberately revealing a slightly rounded belly. Emma's gaze locked on it. Seeing her reaction, Lisa smiled smugly. She pulled out a tablet and began flipping through revealing photos, showing them one by one. Don't think just because President Hahn stayed with you these days that you've won. Look closely, these were taken yesterday. Us. In bed. And this one's from this morning. If you can't satisfy him, why keep clinging to him? This morning? Emma remembered Luis had called earlier, saying traffic was bad and he'd be late. So this was the truth. Her heart was so numb. She couldn't even feel it anymore. Just a desolate ruin that nothing could fill. What are you doing here? Luis appeared at the door, suited up and commanding as ever, clearly fresh from a business negotiation. At the sight of him, Lisa began to tremble, her tone pitiful. I just came to say goodbye to you and Madam. Luis frowned. Lisa continued. I'm flying overseas tonight. I might never come back. With that, she turned and ran out. His leather shoes clicked against the floor, then stopped abruptly. He resisted the urge to chase her. Emma smiled through teary eyes. Not going after her? He forced a stiff smile. She's just an employee, not worth worrying about. But even as he said it, his knuckles clenched and relaxed again at his side. After washing up, Emma suddenly asked to watch a movie. Luis froze mid-page of his book, then smiled. Anything you want. He laid beside her on the bed, the perfect image of a loving husband. But Emma knew his mind had already wandered far. As he held her, his attention was scattered, eyes flicking constantly to his phone. A notification sounded. The man beside her shifted. It was an airport photo. The caption read, "If you don't come chase me now, I'll disappear from your world forever." Luis, facing away from Emma, remained still, gaze fixed on the image. In the dark, he turned over. The cold black and white glow of the movie flickered across his face. He kissed her lightly, then got up and dressed. Amid the rustling of fabric, he whispered gently, "Babe, there's an emergency at the office. I'll be back soon." The whole thing took less than 10 seconds. The room went silent. Darkness swallowed her like a beast. Emma suddenly laughed, bitter, salty. She reached under the bed, pulled out a hidden suitcase, and walked out of the room. On the nightstand, a neatly signed divorce agreement sat in place, waiting. Chapter 10. Snow fell heavily along the way. Countless memories flickered through her mind. Their first meeting in youth, the reunion in college, the fire where he risked his life to save her. Moment after moment, yet all of it had ended in lies and betrayal. Alone at the airport, Emma stood watching the comings and goings. Her eyes welled with tears. Then, an urgent broadcast rang through the terminal. "Miss Lisa, please proceed to the information desk. Your boyfriend is looking for you. He says he shouldn't have been angry with you. He never should have let you go. He can't bear a life without you. He hopes you'll give him another chance. Stay, and let him take care of you and the baby." Around her, excited gasps and cheers erupted. Who is this? So lucky. I believe in love again. Emma stood amidst the crowd, heart numb. He had lied to her again. A commotion broke out ahead. The crowd pushed her forward. There he stood, the man who, not long ago, had sworn to love her forever, now bathed in light and snow. Breathless and haggard, sweat glistened on his temples, sliding down sharply defined features. His chest heaved, and his presence, in a black coat, remained magnetic as ever. He shouted toward a silhouette. Stop. The woman turned, removed her sunglasses, revealing a tear-streaked face as delicate as a flower in the rain. Was what you said in the broadcast true? Or is this just another lie? Luis stepped toward her, gently wiping her tears. Cry, baby. If you keep crying, you won't look pretty anymore. Lisa swatted his hand away, but he didn't get angry. She stubbornly asked, Tell me, do you really love me? Or am I just a fling? Say the wrong thing, and I'm flying overseas this minute. Emma, standing among the onlookers, wanted to know too. What would he say? Luis gave a cold laugh. You didn't even buy a ticket. Where are you flying to? Lisa blinked in shock. How did you know? He chuckled softly. Of course I checked every airline. Next time, try to be a bit smarter. Lisa began sobbing again. Then why did you come? Luis met her gaze head-on. Because you're the mother of my child. The mention of the child stabbed Emma like a knife. Her baby, one who never even saw this world, was lost at the hands of his own father. Tears streamed down Lisa's face. You know that's not what I want to hear. Luis's lips pressed into a tight line. Wasn't everything in the broadcast enough to show how I feel? But Lisa kept staring, red-eyed, unconvinced. She had to hear it from his mouth. Luis locked eyes with her, his expression unreadable in its depths. After a long inner struggle, he finally gave in. Lisa, I'll say this only once. I know you cry and throw tantrums, but I'm willing to indulge you. I know your dreams are ordinary and shallow, but I'll still help you chase them. He paused, then continued. When you said you wanted to improve yourself, I handed you the company's core projects, and afraid you'd mess up, I handpicked the best talent to support you. His breath quickened. To fulfill your dream, I dropped everything and took you to Hokkaido for a proposal, for a honeymoon. And when danger struck, in that split second, I shielded you with my body from the oncoming car. He gave a bitter laugh. And now, you ask if I love you. Do I really need to rip open my chest and show you my heart? Each word fell heavily into Emma's ears. Her heart, like wood under pressure, split completely along the grain. Before he could even finish, Lisa threw herself into his arms, sobbing. Is all of this true? Do you really love me? Luis held her tightly, gently kissed her tears. If you're still unsure, test me again. His arms locked around her, his tone resolute. But this time, even if you run to the ends of the earth, I'll follow you. Cheers erupted from the surrounding crowd. Lisa stood on tiptoe and kissed him. Luis froze for a moment, then took over the kiss with fervor. Emma listened to the cheers, and smiled too, bitter, with tears shimmering in her eyes. So this was the truth behind all his declarations of love for her, all while secretly giving everything to Lisa. She tried to breathe, but it felt like a giant hand twisted her lungs tight. The pain was unbearable. With trembling fingers, she saved the recording, then turned and walked toward the departure gate. Luis seemed to sense something. His gaze swept across the bustling terminal, only catching the flutter of her coat vanishing at the corner of the jet bridge. Chapter 11. Morning sunlight filtered softly through the sheer curtains. Luis frowned as he opened his eyes, his temples pounding from the indulgence of the night before. A warm, soft body snuggled up against him, slender arms wrapped around his waist. President Han, you're awake. Morning desire was always strong, and the woman's hands roamed restlessly under the covers. Luis's temple twitched. He grabbed her wandering wrist firmly. You're pregnant, take it easy. These months are critical. Behave. Don't tempt me. I've got a lot on my plate right now. As he moved to get up, Lisa wrapped herself around his neck, clinging to him like a vine. I just missed you. That's all. I won't compete with Mrs. Han. I know after the miscarriage it'll be hard for her to get pregnant again. So let me have your baby, okay? I don't care about status. I just want more of your time. Her eyes glistened red. That delicate, lovely face, Luis, for a moment, saw a glimpse of college-era Emma in her. His heart softened. So understanding. I'll take you to Provence next week. As he spoke, he rested a hand on her belly. This little one is tough. All that movement and still fine. Lisa's cheeks flushed pink, eyes sultry. She straddled him. President Han, let me help you get dressed. The world spun as Luis flipped her under him. You're teasing me again? How are you always so? Before he could finish, Lisa silenced him with a kiss, their lips locking passionately. She kissed and served him with expert finesse. Breathless, she lay against his chest. Stay tonight, okay? Stay with me and the baby. Luis wanted to pin her down again, but today was Emma's discharge day. He'd promised to pick her up. He kissed Lisa's hand gently. Not today. I need to get my wife. Lisa pouted. Of course. She knew what day it was, that's why she deliberately tried to keep him. She wanted Emma to understand, no matter her title as Mrs. Hahn, she still couldn't hold on to this man's heart. She was destined to be alone. Lisa turned away with a sob. Go on then. Go be with your wife. I'll just stay here and wait for you, with the baby. The move worked like a charm. Luis sighed. He embraced her, his voice tender. Silly girl. Wasn't last night proof enough that I care about you? Lisa forced a few more tears, her expression pitiful. I know. But I just want more of you. Is that so wrong? Luis thought of the night they first met. He'd been drunk, lost in the moment, and things happened between them. Afterward, he offered to compensate her, but she cried and said it had been her choice. Because of that, he had looked after her, watched her grow from a shy girl into this sultry enchantress. He loved Emma, but he couldn't let go of Lisa either. Finally, he gave in. All right. I'll stay with you today. The same old excuse, working late. He picked up his phone to message Emma, only to see his previous text still unanswered. She'd always replied in the past. Even if he just said he'd be late, she'd remind him to rest, to take care of himself. But now, nothing. The chat history showed only his one-sided texts. Panic stirred inside him. He threw on clothes, ready to leave. Lisa quickly grabbed his hand. President Hahn, where are you going? He shook her off and grabbed his phone. Suddenly, Lisa let out a scream. President Hahn, my stomach, it hurts. Luis's heart clenched. Lisa! No time to think, one thought filled his mind. Nothing can happen to Lisa. As for Emma, she would understand. He'd already lost one child. He quickly sent a message to his assistant to pick up Emma from the hospital. But when the rushed assistant arrived, Mrs. Hahn was already long gone. Chapter 12. Luis sat at the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling window, fingers tapping unconsciously against the glass. Outside, snow fell steadily, blurring the city skyline, much like the chaos clouding his thoughts. The watch on his wrist pointed to 11:05. The event had been scheduled to start 30 minutes ago. Sir, his assistant ran in, panting, sweat beading on his forehead. His voice faltered. Madam, she left something for you. Luis caught the evasion in his eyes. A cold feeling surged in his gut. He shot to his feet, knocking over a champagne glass with his cuff. The sharp shatter silenced nearby conversations as guests turned to stare. Luis didn't care. He grabbed his assistant by the tie. What is it? Speak! The assistant's face turned pale from the grip. It's a divorce agreement. Luis staggered as if struck. Shaking, he fumbled for his phone and dialed Emma's number. Again, the cold mechanical voice answered. The number you dialed is powered off. A fear unlike anything he'd ever known clamped around his chest. In 10 years of marriage, Emma had never disappeared like this. Suddenly, he recalled the message he sent last night that she hadn't replied to. The first time ever she hadn't responded to his excuse of working late. He turned toward the guests with visible effort, forcing a stiff smile. My sincerest apologies, he announced, voice brittle. My wife's suddenly fallen ill. Today's anniversary celebration must be cancelled. A representative will be in touch shortly. Disappointed murmurs echoed across the dining hall. Reporters whispered and began packing up equipment. But Luis didn't stay. He stormed toward the elevator, phone already at his ear. Find out where my wife went today. Pull the hospital's surveillance footage. I want her location in 20 minutes. Just before the elevator doors closed, he caught sight of his assistant chasing after him. Hesitation on his face. Luis jabbed the close button. Nothing mattered more right now than finding Emma. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. When the elevator reached the hotel lobby and the doors opened, he was blinded by a flood of camera flashes. President Hahn, is it true you're involved with Secretary Bai? Sources say Lisa is 4 months pregnant. Is the child yours? Today is your anniversary with Mrs. Hahn. Yet you're here meeting a mistress. Does this mean your marriage is over? Luis froze. Before him stood a swarm of reporters and cameras. And behind them, Lisa. She wore a striking red dress, her belly clearly showing. Tears streamed down her carefully made-up face. President Han, her voice trembled. Her image like something from a tragic play. Our baby can't grow up without a father. Luis felt his blood run cold. He understood now, this was a setup. Lisa had orchestrated the entire scene, choosing today, bringing in the media, forcing his hand in public. Utter nonsense. He snapped, shoving aside the nearest camera. He bellowed, "Security! Get these unauthorized people out of here." Chaos erupted. Lisa suddenly stumbled, clutching her stomach and dropping to her knees in pain. The reporters went wild, flashes firing even faster. One even began live streaming. Breaking news! Mistress of Han Group CEO collapses in public. Luis stood rooted to the spot, the world spinning around him. His phone rang again. "President Han, we found something. After you left the hospital, Madam retrieved a hidden suitcase and went directly to the airport." But, airport? Luis's heart sank. She was there that day? In the crowd? The caller hesitated before continuing, voice low. "And we reviewed the footage. Secretary Bai may have threatened Madam." Luis's face darkened completely. A storm was coming, and it was all his doing. Chapter 13. What did they say? Luis's voice was low and tense. "Surveillance footage shows, before you arrived." Lisa said. The assistant hesitated. She told Madam to give up the title of Mrs. Han. The voice on the other end kept speaking, but Luis couldn't hear it anymore. His mind flashed with the image of holding Emma close just the night before. If he hadn't left her, she wouldn't have left him. So she'd known everything all along. At that moment, in a high-rise apartment in Zurich, Emma sat quietly by the floor-to-ceiling window, reviewing documents. Her phone screen lit up repeatedly with missed calls and message notifications. Luis, Nanny Wong, a few unfamiliar numbers. She slid open a push notification. Breaking, Han Corporation CEO's affair exposed, mistress 4 months pregnant. The attached photo showed Luis and Lisa surrounded by reporters in the hotel lobby. She glanced at it, then locked her phone and returned to her paperwork. Outside, the snow thickened, blanketing every trace of the city, just like how she had decided to erase every memory from their 10-year marriage. Back on the other side of the world, Luis stood in an empty hospital room, eyes fixed on the wedding ring and divorce agreement left on the bedside table. It finally sank in. This time, Emma had truly left him. Desperate, he turned to her social media network. It didn't take long for the search to lead to Clara. The screech of tires tore through the quiet. Luis's sports car skidded to a stop in front of their alma mater. He didn't even lock the car. He sprinted toward the school gate, only to be stopped by the guard. "Sir, school's closed for the day. Non-staff can't go in." Luis was breathless. His suit wrinkled, tie crooked. He looked nothing like the polished CEO he usually was. He pulled out his wallet and offered several hundred-yuan notes. "I just need to find someone. I'll be quick." The guard narrowed his eyes. "Wait, you're Luis? President Han?" Luis froze. He glanced at the wall beside the security booth and saw his photo on the outstanding alumni board. He nodded quickly. "Yes, that's me. I'm looking for my wife." "Oh, Kim Sr.?" The guard's eyes lit up. "She came by a few days ago, sat by the track alone for quite a while." Luis felt like an invisible fist clutched his heart. "Did she say where she was going?" The guard shook his head, then seemed to recall something. "She left a letter in the principal's office." Luis sprinted toward the administration building. The principal looked stunned to see him. "Emma said you'd come. Didn't expect it so soon." He handed over a beige envelope. On the front, written in Emma's delicate script, "To Luis." His fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It was them, back in college, standing beneath the old pagoda tree. He had his arm around her shoulders, and she was smiling, eyes curled like crescent moons. On the back, one line, "If only we could meet for the first time. All over again." The principal sighed. "Emma was here a few days ago. She donated a large sum to the library. Said it was where you two used to spend time together." Luis's vision blurred. He remembered junior year. He'd wait in the library corner for her. She'd arrive with a stack of books, sunlight catching the strands of her hair, glowing like gold. Did she say anything else? Luis's voice cracked. The principal shook his head. She looked calm, just stood under the tree for a long time. Oh, she asked for a copy of your class graduation photo. Luis's heart leapt with hope, but the next words crushed him. She said, since you two were getting divorced, there was no reason to keep it on display. She asked to take it, so she could burn it. Outside, rain began to fall. Heavy drops struck the windshield like the steady collapse of his hope. Luis was soaked through. He raced upstairs, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. The door creaked open. The room was spotless, just like when she was there. On the table, a cup of cold tea sat untouched. On the coffee table, a photo album lay open, filled with all their happiest moments. Rain beat harder against the windows, each drop a reminder, a sharp knock against his guilt. He lifted the teacup and saw something at the bottom. His wedding ring. The engraving inside had faded, but the promise remained seared in memory. 2015, 6/18, the day they pledged forever beneath that tree. A bolt of lightning flashed, illuminating the wall. Hanging there was the calligraphy Emma had written by hand, to have one heart, and to never part. Luis buried his face in his hands, tears seeping through his fingers. Now he understood. Emma hadn't left on impulse. She'd started dying inside from the very first betrayal, and the woman who once loved him with her whole heart had disappeared the moment he chose to protect another. Chapter 14. The snow fell heavier still as Luis's trembling fingers brushed over a pile of old, yellowing love letters. Each one was written in Emma's delicate handwriting, chronicling their journey together since university. I'll always wear the scarf you gave me, because you'll always be the one who keeps me warm. Internships must be hard, right? I made some soup for you. Don't forget to come get it. Mr. Hahn, congratulations on becoming my fiancé. Luis's vision blurred. Tears splashed onto the paper, smudging her words. He turned to the last envelope. Inside were neatly stacked train tickets, surprises Emma had planned when he was on business trips but never got to use. She was always like that, preparing everything in silence, never asking for anything in return. At the very bottom was a packet of printed screenshots, messages from Lisa. Mrs. Hahn, your husband is in my bed right now. He likes me more than you. Didn't you know? He's spending your wedding anniversary with me. And the final blow. Good thing you lost the baby. President Hahn said he only wants mine anyway. Luis doubled over, a wrenching pain in his stomach. He grabbed his keys and stormed out, straight to Lisa's apartment. The door burst open under his force. Lisa woke with a start, barely processing what was happening before she was yanked by the hair from her bed. President Hahn? She gasped in delight, but her surprise turned to shock as his palm cracked across her face. What did you say to her? What did you do? His voice was pure rage. Dragged up from the depths of hell, he grabbed her throat and shoved his phone screen in her face. Lisa turned ghostly pale. I was just what? Another slap. Just killed my child? Just drove my wife away? Lisa curled up in pain, her voice barely audible. The baby, save the baby. Luis stared coldly at her, mind filled with the image of Emma, pale and weak in her hospital bed. You think you deserve to talk about children? He snarled, yanking her up again. The woman in front of him, once soft and sweet, was now unrecognizable. She laughed and cried all at once, mascara running down her cheeks. And now you blame me? You're the one who chose to save me first. Luis froze. Lisa leaned into her madness. One swollen cheek puffed, her voice rising. You were drunk that night. I only helped you into bed. You were the one who started taking your clothes off. Everyone says you loved your wife, but with just a little coaxing, you ended up in my bed. Face it, you crave the thrill. You and we're the same. Selfish, manipulative, willing to use anyone to get what we want. Luis's hands tightened around her throat. Shut up. But Lisa kept going. Deranged eyes locked on his. You won't really hurt me, because this baby inside me is your only heir. The soft, helpless girl had become a vicious predator, baring fangs beneath a tender smile. A long silence fell. Finally, Luis released her and stood. He looked down at her with disgust. You'd better pray I find her, or else. He didn't finish. He turned and left. He didn't hit her again, didn't force her to get an abortion. Lisa knew she'd won, for now. She laughed through her tears. In the snowy night, Luis drove aimlessly, calling Emma over and over. No one answered. He returned to the home they once shared. Every corner bore traces of her. The blue mug she always used in the kitchen, the half-finished sweater on the couch, the honeymoon photo still on the nightstand. In the photo, Emma's smile was radiant. Now, that same smile was gone, left behind with a broken heart. Luis staggered into the bathroom, turned on the cold water, and scrubbed himself furiously. I'm dirty, that's why she left me. He rubbed until his skin turned red, raw. In the mirror, his bloodshot eyes stared back. He was no longer the young man who once knelt in the snow to propose. Fever hit him fast. Luis collapsed on the bed, mind unraveling. In a haze, he drifted back to their youth. Hey, classmate, you dropped your pen. A girl with a ponytail smiled in the library, brighter than the sunlight outside. The scene jumped to their graduation ceremony. Luis, we'll always be together, okay? Then their wedding. She stood in white, eyes misted with tears, saying I do. And then, Emma, lying in blood, staring at him with endless disappointment. That single moment, his instinctual choice to save someone else, had killed her love. Don't go. Emma, please don't go. Luis whimpered in his sleep, soaked with sweat and tears. When his assistant found him the next day, he was burning with a 40 degrees Celsius fever. The house doctor rushed over, starting in 4, but Luis fought to sit up. I have to find her. She's waiting for me. His assistant tried to calm him. President Hahn, you can't go anywhere in this state. She doesn't want me anymore. Luis broke down like a child. I lost her. Outside, the snow kept falling, just like it had the day they first met. Only this time, no one would hold an umbrella for him again. Chapter 15. 3 years later. ETH Zurich, Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. Emma, now a newly admitted PhD student, was late for her very first research group meeting, clutching a heavy folder of materials. She rushed through the door, only to trip on the threshold. Papers flew into the air as she tumbled forward. A strong arm caught her at the waist just in time. Emma looked up and met a pair of calm, deep-set eyes behind glasses. Thank you. Senior, she stammered as she steadied herself, recognizing the man as Fabian, the institute's youngest postdoctoral fellow, and her direct supervisor. Fabian let go, bent to gather her scattered documents, and said in a voice as cold as alpine ice, "You're 15 minutes late. I'm sorry. I got lost." Emma flushed with embarrassment. Lab B meetings are every Wednesday. Campus map, page 37 of the admission guide. He handed her the reassembled documents and turned toward the conference room, his every step radiating do not approach energy. Everyone knew Fabian was notoriously strict. The lab he supervised had the highest elimination rate at the institute, and students privately nicknamed him Glacierly. But it was also true, every student under his guidance eventually published in top-tier journals. By the end of the meeting, Emma felt completely drained. On the walk back to the lab, the sky had turned gray. Thunder rumbled in the distance. A low-profile Rolls-Royce glided past. The window rolled down. Get in. Emma blinked, glanced at the folders in her arms. She couldn't risk them getting soaked, then quickly climbed aboard. Back in the lab, the two worked in near-perfect silence, fully immersed in their tasks. By 4 p.m., dark clouds loomed ominously overhead. Emma was recording data when lightning slashed the sky, followed by a deafening clap of thunder. The lab lights flickered, then went out entirely. A power outage? She froze in the darkness, the pen slipping from her hand and hitting the floor with a sharp clack. Emma? Fabian's voice came from the adjacent room, accompanied by hurried footsteps. Emma tried to answer, but her throat felt constricted. She groped for the edge of the bench, but accidentally knocked over a petri dish. The sound of shattering glass pierced the silence. Don't move! Fabian's voice was suddenly very close. There's glass on the floor. A second later, a beam of light cut through the darkness, his phone flashlight. He strode over, brows furrowed, the glow revealing Emma's pale face and sweat-dampened forehead. You're afraid of the dark? He asked, his voice gentler now. Emma gave a slight nod. Ever since the car accident, darkness had terrified her. Fabian hesitated, then did something neither of them expected. He pulled her gently into his arms. "Breathe," he murmured by her ear, his voice low and steady. "Match my rhythm. Inhale, exhale." Emma stiffened, but Fabian's scent, faint cedarwood mixed with disinfectant, was unexpectedly soothing. She could hear his heartbeat through his shirt, firm and grounding. "Better?" he asked after a moment, pulling back just enough to look at her. His hand still rested lightly on her shoulders. She nodded. He didn't press her further, just lifted his phone. Backup power should come on soon. "Let's wait in the lounge." With one hand holding the light and the other casually taking hers, he led her through the darkened lab. Emma was surprised. His hand was warm and dry, nothing like the icy persona he usually projected. In the lounge, a faint blue emergency light glowed by the sofa. Fabian guided her to sit, then retrieved a thermos from the cabinet. "Have some hot water." He offered it to her. "Your hands are freezing." As their fingers briefly touched, he jerked his hand back, like he'd been burned. Emma tilted her head. "How did you know the thermos was in there?" Fabian sat across from her, the phone's glow highlighting his sharp profile. "I often work late." He paused, then added quietly, "Sometimes I see you working late too." Emma blinked. "Senior, you've been watching me?" In the dim light, she thought she saw the tips of his ears turn red. He cleared his throat. "As a project lead, it's normal to keep tabs on team members." The rain outside intensified, pounding against the glass. Emma cupped the warm water and chuckled softly. "Senior, you're different today." "How so?" "In the lab, you barely speak. But today," she pointed to the thermos, then mimed the earlier hug. "You were really gentle." Fabian was silent, just as Emma thought he wouldn't answer. He said softly, "Because it's you." Those 4 simple words made her heart skip a beat. She wasn't sure she'd heard right, and didn't dare ask for more. Just then, a loud alarm broke the moment. The emergency broadcast echoed through the lab. "Attention all personnel, a red-level storm warning has been issued. Please wrap up experiments and ensure safety." Fabian frowned. "That's it for today. Then, I'll take you home." Through the hallway windows, they could see the storm raging outside. Trees swayed violently in the wind. Fabian checked the time. "Then the storm. It'll be hard to get a ride in this weather." "I can wait until the rain slows." "I'll drive you," he cut in, firm. Emma hesitated. The rain only grew fiercer. "Okay." Fabian visibly relaxed and nodded. "I'll get the car. Wait for me at the entrance." Chapter 16. The car quickly arrived downstairs at her apartment. The rain had eased up considerably, but the night had grown even darker. The streetlights cast flickering reflections in the puddles, like shattered golden glass. "Thank you, Senior," Emma said as she unbuckled her seatbelt. Just as she pushed the door open, Fabian suddenly spoke. "Wait." His voice was lower than usual, with a subtle, almost imperceptible tension. Emma turned back and saw under the dim yellow cabin light, Fabian's lashes casting faint shadows on his face, and his Adam's apple bobbing almost unnoticeably. "Next Saturday. Are you interested in going to a concert?" His fingers tapped the steering wheel unconsciously. "It's a Tchaikovsky special." Emma was stunned. She saw the tips of Fabian's ears reddening at a speed visible to the naked eye, the flush spreading all the way to his neck. This senior, usually so commanding in the lab, now seemed like a nervous boy experiencing his first crush. "Are you?" Emma asked uncertainly. "Asking me out?" The car suddenly became unnervingly quiet, the sound of raindrops hitting the roof unusually clear. Fabian turned to face her directly, the nervousness in his eyes gradually replaced by determination. "Yes." His voice was soft, but every word was clear. "I want to officially invite you, not as a junior, but as Emma, someone I want to know better." His words were like a pebble dropped into a still lake, sending ripples through Emma's heart. She suddenly remembered all those moments in the lab she had overlooked, how he always happened to be there when she needed something. The mysteriously appearing cups of hot coffee on her desk, the name always listed right behind hers on the borrowing slip. "I thought," Emma tightened her grip on her bag strap, "you were just this kind to everyone." Fabian gave a wry smile. "I don't have that much gentleness to spare for everyone else." The night breeze drifted in through the car window, carrying the fresh scent of rain-soaked earth. Emma looked at Fabian's face just inches away, noticing for the first time the faint tear mole at the corner of his left eye, like a pencil mark lightly dotted there. So, he asked nervously, "What's your answer?" Emma suddenly smiled, watching as Fabian held his breath. "I'd love to." Fabian's eyes lit up, like stars suddenly flickering on in the night sky. He replied with restraint. "Then, Saturday at 7 in the evening, I'll pick you up." Standing in front of the apartment building, Emma watched Fabian's car slowly pull away, the taillights dragging two red trails on the wet road, touching her burning cheeks. She suddenly realized spring might be on its way. Elsewhere, Luis, who had been searching for Emma like mad, was now in her city attending the IPO ceremony at President Lee's invitation. All these years, he had been expanding his power, just to get one step closer to finding Emma. But Emma was too smart, she had erased every trace. Unwilling to leave him even a sliver of hope, he watched as President Lee approached, hand in hand with his wife. The couple looked so warm and harmonious. Luis couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. President Lee greeted him warmly. "President Han, since you're here, I must show you some hospitality. There's a concert tomorrow, don't know if you'd be willing to attend." Luis was about to refuse, but Mrs. Lee spoke first. "You just want to use the opportunity to see what kind of girl your son's interested in, don't you?" President Lee laughed. Still holding his wife's hand, "Nothing escapes your eyes." Looking at the loving couple, Luis inexplicably said yes. Chapter 17. Our City. Zurich Concert Hall. The crystal chandeliers cast golden light across the venue, where refined guests mingled and clinked glasses amid elegant attire. Luis stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, absent-mindedly tracing the rim of his champagne flute with his fingertips. Outside, the snow-capped Alps stretched endlessly, tinged with a soft pink under the setting sun. 5 years. He had been searching for her for 5 whole years. "Emma, where on earth are you?" The music began to play. He sat with President Lee and his wife in a private box on the second floor. Mrs. Lee held up a pair of binoculars, pointing toward a man in a black suit below. "Look, our son is so handsome." Luis glanced casually. The next second, his pupils contracted. Whatever Mrs. Lee was saying, he no longer heard a word of it. All he could see was the figure in white beside that man. The person who had occupied his heart for so long was now standing right in front of him. He fought to suppress his impulse, his hand resting on the back of the chair clenched and unclenched. His eyes stayed locked on the pair below, burning with intensity, one piece after another. He watched Emma the entire concert. As the audience began to leave, Fabian let his date out and happened to run into Mrs. Lee. "Mother?" Luis followed behind, silently watching Emma. His gaze swept over the woman beside Fabian, a white gown draped gracefully, her hair loosely pinned up, revealing a delicate neckline. She was slightly lowering her head, adjusting her purse. Under the light, her profile was as fine as porcelain. Then, in that moment, the woman looked up. Luis's breath caught. Time seemed to freeze. That face, the one that haunted his dreams, was right before him. "This is my junior, Emma." Fabian introduced her gently. "She's also the soul of our RD department." Luis saw the way they stood together. His fingers trembled almost imperceptibly. President Lee, looking at the woman beside his son, felt an odd sense of familiarity. Mrs. Lee said, "Miss Kim is so lovely. Do you have a boyfriend? Our son is still single." "Miss Kim, maybe you could consider him?" Emma looked up, her polite smile still in place, but the moment she saw Luis, her fingertips gave a barely visible twitch. Fabian noticed immediately and quickly cut in. "Mother, Emma's my colleague. We have lab data to process. We'll take our leave now." Luis stood still, watching her figure recede into the distance. 5 years of longing, and all he got was a stranger's glance. President Lee rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Strange. This Miss Kim, she seems familiar." But Luis never took his eyes off Emma. As she turned, a small patch of pale pink scarring was revealed on the back of her neck, left by the car accident years ago. That sight pierced his heart like a blunt knife. He quickly said his goodbyes. "President Lee, something came up, I'll head out first." Mrs. Lee shook her head, watching the younger generation, each more urgent than the last. As soon as he opened the car door, Luis rushed forward. "Emma, don't go. Can we talk?" Fabian stepped in front of her, his tone cold. "Who are you?" Luis sneered. "I'm her husband. Back off." "That's enough." Emma cut in, stopping them both. Fabian pressed his lips together, clearly displeased by the man in front of him. Emma spoke gently. "Senior, please go ahead. I have something to handle." Seeing that she never once looked at him, Luis felt a stab of pain. "Emma." Fabian wasn't comfortable leaving her alone. "I'll wait at the cafe nearby." Luis heard that and could hardly restrain the urge to punch him, but he held it in. Pathetically, he said, "Emma, I've been looking for you for so long." Emma looked at him calmly. "There's nothing between us anymore. We got divorced 3 years ago." Luis stared at her, sadness clouding his expression. His voice came out hoarse. "Emma, I won't accept the divorce. Not in this lifetime." Chapter 18. Emma lowered her gaze, refusing to look at him. "It doesn't matter. We've been separated for 2 years. I already filed for automatic divorce. Don't appear in front of me again. I don't want to remember those days." Luis looked devastated, his tall figure appearing pitiful and broken. After a moment, he forced back his grief and spoke his heart. "I was wrong. I never loved Lisa. At the beginning, I treated her like any other secretary. But one day, I was under too much pressure from work and got drunk. She took me back to my room, and in my daze, something happened between us. Afterward, I deeply regretted it. I wanted to transfer her, but she suddenly knelt and begged me, saying she had a family to support. I only kept her out of pity. I really don't love her. I swear. It was only that one time. That's the whole truth. I regret it. Emma, can you forgive me?" Emma slapped him. Her gaze was icy. "Luis, you're disgusting." He tried to say something more, but Emma had already turned and walked away. He wanted to chase after her, but his assistant stopped him. "President Han, there's been an incident with Miss Bai." Luis's expression turned cold. "What has that crazy woman done now?" The assistant replied, "It's not her. It's the young master." He froze. After a few moments of thought, he finally chose to watch Emma leave with his own eyes. He clenched his fists, struggling to resist the urge to run after her. No rush. He had found her. He would be with Emma again soon, and with their child. After a chaotic night, Emma returned to her normal life. Standing in front of the electron microscope, her fingers flew over the keyboard as the cell images on the screen zoomed in. Outside the window, the Alps stood tall and white year-round. Sunlight streamed through the glass, casting a soft glow on her lab coat, making her skin appear almost translucent. "The comparative data results are in." Fabian's voice came from behind. He handed her a document, his long fingers pointing at a section. "The gene mutation rate of the third sample is abnormal, just like you predicted." Emma took the paper. Their fingertips brushed briefly, and she instinctively pulled her hand back. Fabian's gaze darkened slightly, but he quickly composed himself. "Thank you." She lowered her head to read the data, her long hair falling to cover half her face. Ever since the night she unexpectedly ran into Luis at the concert, she hadn't slept well for 3 days. A faint shadow lingered beneath her eyes. Fabian quietly observed her for a moment, then suddenly asked, "Are you still going to the academic dinner tonight?" Emma's fingers paused. The dinner was organized by President Lee to celebrate the success of the new drug development. As an investor, Luis would undoubtedly attend. "Of course," she said, closing the file with a smile. "Our research results deserve to be celebrated." Fabian nodded but didn't look away. "If you run into someone you don't want to see, you can leave at any time." Emma stiffened. "He knew?" Before she could answer, the lab door opened and an assistant peeked in. "Dr. Kim, there's a Mr. Han looking for you downstairs." The air instantly froze. Emma's back straightened, and her fingers gripped the edge of her lab coat unconsciously. Fabian's gaze turned icy. He immediately turned around. "I'll handle it." "No need." Emma took a deep breath and stood up. "I'll deal with it myself." Downstairs in the lobby, Luis stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, the black suit accentuating his sharp shoulders. The 5 years hadn't left many marks on his face, only added a calm, mature aura. When he heard footsteps, he spun around. "Emma." That low call clenched at Emma's heart like a fist. She stopped 3 steps away, her expression blank. "President Han." What do you want? Luis's Adam's apple bobbed as he stared at her face, full of longing. She was thinner, her gaze colder. The gentle girl he remembered had turned into a blade drawn from its sheath. His voice was hoarse. I just wanted to see you. Emma scoffed. Well, I didn't want to see you. Not even a little. Luis stepped forward. She immediately stepped back. That movement stabbed into his chest like a knife. Emma, can we talk? His voice trembled. Just 5 minutes. About what? Emma lifted her eyes, frost in her gaze. About how you protected Lisa in the car crash, or how you let her carry your child. Luis's face turned ghostly pale. She knew. How much did she know? Luis scrambled mentally to calculate the best strategy. Just then, the elevator dinged open and Fabian strode out, stepping directly between them. President Hahn. His voice was like ice. This is a restricted research facility. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed. The two men's gazes clashed, sparks crackling in the air. Luis narrowed his eyes. Dr. Lee, matters between my wife and me are none of your business. Wife. Fabian sneered and pulled out a document from his briefcase, slapping it against Luis's chest. The divorce agreement took effect 3 years ago. Luis looked down and saw Emma's familiar signature. It felt like a knife driving into his heart. Emma turned and walked away. Emma! Luis tried to follow, but Fabian blocked him. Don't bother her again, Fabian said in a low voice, or I won't hesitate to let her know all the dirty things you've done behind her back. Luis's pupils contracted. By the time he snapped out of it, Emma was already gone, vanished into the far end of the lobby. Chapter 19. Late at night. In the apartment, Emma curled up on the sofa, a cup of long cold tea in her hands. On the TV, a financial news report played. Hahn Corporation announced today that it will invest 5 billion city francs to support local biomedical research. She turned off the TV. The room sank into darkness. Her phone suddenly vibrated, a text from an unknown number. I'm downstairs. If you won't see me, I'll wait here forever. Emma walked to the window and lifted a corner of the curtain. Through the swirling snow, Luis stood alone under the street lamp, his shoulders already layered in thick snow. Just like many years ago, the boy who once sold scarves in the snow. Emma closed the curtain, completely shutting out that stubborn figure. Let him stand there. Let him stand until he dies. The snow outside grew heavier. Occasionally, the wind would drive snowflakes against the glass with soft, scattering sounds. At 3 a.m., she got up to use the restroom. Luis was still standing there, his shoulders and hair completely blanketed in snow. Like a forsaken snowman, Emma yanked the curtain shut. The next morning, when Emma opened the door, she nearly stepped on a heap of darkness. Luis had curled up right at her doorway, still in the snow-soaked suit from the night before. His lips were tinged blue from the cold. Hearing the door, he looked up suddenly, his eyes bloodshot. Emma, his voice was hoarse. He braced against the wall to stand, stumbling from numb legs. Emma looked at him blankly. President Hahn, are you performing some pitiful act now? Luis shook his head and carefully pulled a thermal container from his coat. Your stomach's not good. You need hot food for breakfast. Inside were her once favorite soup dumplings, still steaming. Emma didn't even glance at it. She raised her hand and knocked it over. Clatter. The dumplings scattered across the floor. Luis's hand froze in midair. Trying to act all tender now? Emma said coldly. Where was this concern when I was in the hospital after a miscarriage while you were with Lisa? Luis turned pale, his fingers curling reflexively. He slowly crouched down and began picking up the dumplings with his bare hands, his voice barely audible. I'll go get you more. Emma looked at his pathetic form and couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Luis! She grabbed his collar. Where's that ruthless ambition you had in the business world? Now you're playing the pitiful card? Luis let her yank him around, his eyes dim. Because I deserve it. Emma suddenly let go of him, recoiling as if she'd touched something filthy. Just then, a black Mercedes slowly pulled up at the curb. Fabian rolled down the window. His gaze swept between the two, finally landing on Emma. Get in. There's an issue with the lab data. His tone was calm, as if he hadn't even seen Luis's pathetic state. Emma didn't look back. She walked straight to the car. Luis instinctively took a step forward. Emma! Fabian suddenly got out and blocked him, his voice cold as ice. President Hahn, Clinging like this is pathetic. Louise stared at Fabian's hand guarding the car door and suddenly laughed. Dr. Lee, do you think swooping in while I'm down makes you the winner? Fabian's expression didn't change. At least I wouldn't leave her to die in a car crash. That sentence stabbed through Louise's chest like a knife. He stood frozen, watching as Emma got into Fabian's car. Just as the door shut, he heard her icy voice. Drive. Don't mind that rabid dog. She called him a rabid dog. Louise stood in the snow, watching the Mercedes disappear into the distance, his internal organs writhing in pain. His assistant rushed up to steady him. President Hahn, your health is more important. He shook his head. Without Emma, his life had lost all meaning. Chapter 20. Fabian didn't take Emma back to the lab. The car headed south, through the city and toward the coastal outskirts. Emma sat in silence, watching the scenery blur past outside the window. The data's fine, Fabian said calmly, one hand on the wheel. But you looked like you needed a breather. Emma's fingertips curled slightly. He had noticed. She did need to escape. Escape from the man who pretended to be devoted while standing in the snow. Escape from a past that clung and refused to let go. The sound of waves gradually grew clearer as Fabian parked by a secluded bay. The sun dipped low in the sky, scattering golden light across the sea like floating shards. Fabian followed behind her, always keeping just the right distance, close enough to show he was there, but far enough to give her space. I first met him on the street. Emma suddenly spoke. Her voice was so soft it was nearly swallowed by the waves. Fabian paused mid-step. He was wearing thin clothes, his cheeks frozen red, and his hands were cracked and bleeding from the cold. I watched him for a long time, until someone knocked over his stall. The driver cursed at him, but he didn't say a word. I thought then, this man is so pitiful. I want to help him. I bought 11 scarves in one go. Gave him one. She looked down at her palm, as if she could still feel the softness of that scarf. When he looked up to thank me, it was like there were stars in his eyes. The sea breeze swept through her hair, revealing a faint scar on the side of her neck, left by the lab explosion. Fabian's gaze lingered on it for a moment, his throat moving slightly. But in the end, he said nothing. And after that? After that? Emma gave a bitter smile. He pursued me for 2 whole years, saved me from a fire, proposed to me in front of everyone at our graduation. People called us a perfect couple. He almost died then, but fate spared him. He survived, with a scar on his forehead. He said it was proof of his love for me. Emma lowered her head, letting out a mocking laugh at herself. Fabian wanted to hold her, to comfort her, but Emma kept speaking. My mother died early. My father handed the family business over to him. I thought we would always be in love, even when we couldn't have children. He said he didn't care, that all he wanted was to be with me. Her voice began to tremble. In the 3rd year of our marriage, I noticed a lipstick mark on the collar of his shirt. He said it happened by accident during a business dinner. A seagull skimmed across the water, its sharp cry piercing the silence. I believed him. Fabian saw her clench her fists, her nails digging deep into her palms, until I found intimate photos of him with another woman on his phone. The waves suddenly turned violent, crashing against the rocks and splashing cold, white foam into the air. Emma tilted her face toward the setting sun, shadows and light dancing across her skin. Do you know what the cruelest part is? Her voice finally shattered. On the day of the car crash, I was still pregnant with his child, and he used his body to protect another woman. Fabian closed his eyes tightly. He had imagined Emma's wounds, but not that they were carved down to the bone. After a long time, a warm jacket was gently draped over her shoulders. The wind's picking up. Let's head back. Fabian didn't say, it's all in the past, or you'll find someone better. He simply stood beside her, like a silent mountain, shielding her from the oncoming storm. Emma clutched the edge of the coat, and suddenly, her tears fell like rain. It was the first time she had truly cried since the divorce. Chapter 21. After a short rest, Emma asked to return to the lab. Fabian's plan for a date had to be shelved, at least for now. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the car windows. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt, her fingers brushing against the coat still draped over her shoulders, warm from his body heat. Thank you, she said softly, just as she was about to take it off and hand it back. A warm hand suddenly covered hers. Emma froze. Fabian's hand was trembling slightly, the heat from his palm almost searing her skin. Was he really that nervous? As if burned, he quickly pulled his hand away. The moment he turned his face aside, Emma caught a glimpse of his taut neckline, his ears glowing red under the light, nearly transparent with embarrassment. "Keep it on," he said hoarsely, his Adam's apple bobbing. "It's cold at night." If Emma still couldn't see what was going on, she'd have to be completely dense. She suddenly leaned in close, and with Fabian's back going rigid like a startled deer, she asked bluntly, "Fabian, do you like me?" Bang! The car keys in Fabian's hand slipped and hit the foot mat. His face flushed dramatically, from his ears all the way to his collarbone. His hands clenched and unclenched around the steering wheel, and his breath grew uneven. The normally poised man looked like a shrimp steamed to bright red. He was way too easy to tease. Emma started to regret her abruptness and gave a dry laugh. "Don't take it seriously, I was just kidding." "Yes, I do like you." He suddenly looked up, his peach blossom eyes filled with an earnestness she had never seen before. Emma was caught off guard. "I like you," he repeated, his voice shaking but firm. "If you're willing to give me a chance." The air in the car was so quiet, they could hear each other's heartbeat. Emma looked at his tense jawline, unable to resist teasing a little. After all, the way he blushed was just too adorable. "All right, then let's try being together." Fabian's eyes lit up instantly, like someone had thrown a handful of stars into them. He pursed his lips and, like a bashful kid, asked, "You're serious?" So this was what it was like when the cold, distant genius fell in love. Emma reached out and held his hand. Fabian froze, then turned and gripped hers in return, with such strength it almost hurt. He turned to her, eyes dancing with barely contained joy, like a boy who had finally gotten the candy he'd long dreamed of. Emma suddenly realized, he might have liked her for a long, long time, since the night he stayed up late helping revise her thesis? Or maybe even earlier, back when she just joined the lab and he coincidentally brought her hot coffee every morning? So, Fabian suddenly leaned closer, his breath brushing the tip of her nose. "Can I officially start pursuing you now?" His eyelashes cast delicate shadows under his eyes, and in his pupils, only she was reflected. Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Yes," she whispered. In the next second, a kiss, restrained and reverent, fell on the back of her hand. Across the street, in the shadow of a building, Luis stood. A cigarette burned down to his fingers, scorching his skin red. Though he didn't seem to notice, his eyes were locked onto the black Mercedes parked below Emma's apartment. Inside the car, Fabian was holding her hand, the atmosphere between them unmistakably intimate. Fabian still held her hand as they walked toward the lab building, side by side. Bang! Luis punched the wall. Blood instantly poured from his knuckles. That was his wife. His Emma. His phone screen lit up. A call from Lisa. "President Han. The young master has a fever. Can you come see him?" He hung up immediately and dialed another number. "Get the team ready. Proceed with the plan." Chapter 22. The next morning, Emma got up. Her lawyer called. Luis had somehow manipulated the system, legally. Their marriage was still considered active. Emma frowned. "Can I sue him directly?" she asked. There was a brief hesitation on the line before the lawyer spoke again. "I'm afraid you'll have to negotiate with Mr. Han. The records show there's ambiguity in how your shared assets were defined." Emma pulled open the curtains. A car was parked by the roadside. Luis had been parking there every night. She was completely fed up. Thinking of all this made her furious. She grabbed her coat and headed straight downstairs. Luis sat inside, wrapped in an overcoat, eyes closed as he tried to rest. In his hands, he still clutched that old scarf from years ago. Emma knocked on the car window. He startled awake. He rushed out of the car, messy hair falling over his dark eyes. He spoke carefully. "Emma, you're finally willing to come see me." Just a few words in, and his voice began to choke. That look, like he couldn't live without her. Like he was on the verge of breaking. She'd seen it too many times over the years. Looking at his face alone, no one would believe that this was the man who cheated. After a few seconds, he continued, "Emma, I didn't mean to disturb you. I missed you so much. All these years, I haven't been able to sleep well. I think about you constantly. If I lose you again, I'll go insane. Emma, I was wrong. Please, don't push me away. Let's start over. Please. Emma cut him off coldly. Are you the one interfering with the divorce? In the dark, Luis grew desperate. I just didn't want to lose you. Emma, I love you. I've always loved you. Emma, stop deluding yourself. I'm already someone else's girlfriend. Don't come looking for me again. Luis's face turned deathly pale, despair flooding his eyes. Emma, do you hate me that much? Emma's voice was emotionless. It's not hate, it's disgust. So much disgust I don't even want to fight you over property. I don't want to spend one more second around you. You keep saying you love me, but just days ago, you were still lying to me. Luis's body froze. Emma gave a small laugh and continued. I saw it. The rooftop, the hallway, the desk. I saw all the places you and Lisa fooled around. Luis's face drained of color. Even now, you're still plotting, still lying. Are you calculating your next move in your head right now? Luis's thoughts were struck dead center. Panic stirred inside him. Emma looked him straight in the eye, her voice cold and deliberate. Lies, cheating, manipulation, deceit. That's who you really are. You and Lisa are the same, both selfish to the core. Her words cut straight to the essence of Luis, tearing down everything he'd spent years carefully concealing. He looked shattered, the scarf slipping from his hands as he dropped to his knees. Emma looked down at him, eyes like ice, and spoke again. All these years, you came home at 7 sharp, always freshly showered. With your perfect morning kisses, you managed every part of my life, carefully leading me into the cage you built. Luis, you're brilliant, brilliant in a terrifying way. I will never be with you again. If you're really so smart, disappear from my life. Get lost. She turned around, unwilling to look at him for even another second. But she had only taken a few steps, when a cloth soaked in ether was suddenly pressed hard against her nose and mouth. Emma, don't be scared. Before losing consciousness, she heard Luis's deranged whisper. Chapter 23. Emma woke up with a splitting headache. Above her was an unfamiliar European-style dome ceiling. Sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains onto silk bedsheets. The air was faintly scented with roses. This wasn't her apartment. Mommy! A soft, childish voice rang out suddenly. Emma turned sharply and found herself staring into a pair of big, round eyes. A little boy, no more than 3 years old, was leaning against the edge of the bed, poking her face with his tiny fingers. Her blood ran cold. Impossible. Her child had died in the womb 5 years ago in that car crash. Who are you? Her voice was hoarse, and she instinctively shrank back. The little boy tilted his head, then suddenly turned and ran to the door. Daddy, Mommy's awake. Footsteps approached quickly. Luis entered, holding a breakfast tray, absurdly dressed in a cartoon apron. You're awake, he said casually, sitting beside the bed. He patted the little boy's head. Noah, go tell the butler to prepare lunch. Noah Han. Emma stared fixedly at the child's face, those brows, that smile, the little canine tooth when he grinned. He looked exactly like a young Luis. Are you insane? Her voice shook. Where did you get a child to trick me? Luis set down the tray and gently stroked her hair. He's our child. He's been waiting for you to come back all these years. I raised him carefully these past 3 years. Every night he fell asleep looking at your photo. I taught him to say mommy, just for this day. He clasped her cold hand. Emma, our family is finally together again. His smile was so gentle. It was chilling. Emma looked at the boy again. His innocence was heartbreaking, but those eyes, they were exactly like Lisa's. Luis, she said, voice like ice. You've truly lost your mind. Luis's tender expression froze. Sensing something wrong, the boy tugged at Emma's sleeve timidly. Mommy, don't you like Noah? That single word, mommy, ignited all of Emma's fury. She flung his hand away and glared at Luis. You had Lisa's child call me mom? A crack finally split across Luis's expression. He reached for her. Emma, let me explain. Explain what? Emma sneered. Explain how you had a child with Lisa and brainwashed him into thinking I'm his mother? You're disgusting. Luis. The boy, startled by her tone, began to tear up. Daddy, why is Mommy being mean to me? Luis picked him up and gently soothed. Noah, be good. Mommy's just sick. He was lying to the child, and lying to himself. Emma watched the scene unfold, a bitter sense of absurdity rising in her chest. She stood up and headed straight for the door, but the handle didn't budge, it was locked. Luis's voice came from behind, eerily soft. Emma, this is our home now. You, me, and Noah. Our family of 3 will never be apart again. Emma turned around, her words sharp as knives. My child died long ago, and you don't deserve to be a father. Late that night, Emma stood by the window, staring into the pitch-black darkness outside the estate. This was her 3rd day in captivity. It was also the 3rd day Fabian had been searching for her. Footsteps approached the door. Emma quickly slipped back into bed and feigned sleep. Luis opened the door quietly and walked over, his fingers brushing her cheek. Emma, he murmured, why won't you forgive me? Emma held her breath until his footsteps retreated. She opened her eyes and reached under the pillow, pulling out a small knife, taken from the dinner table the night before. If Luis insisted on forcing her to act out this grotesque family drama, she wouldn't mind ending it in blood. Chapter 24. Morning sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow across the dining room. A refined breakfast was laid out: fried eggs, toast, hot milk, and a small dish of blueberry jam, the kind Emma used to love. Luis, wearing an apron, skillfully spread honey on Noah's toast, his gaze so gentle it bordered on delusional. Mommy, this is for you. Noah pushed the jam toward her with his tiny hands, eyes gleaming. Daddy said this is your favorite. Emma stared at the jam, her fingertips trembling slightly. The child was indeed adorable, but the moment she thought about what Luis had done, she couldn't suppress the fire rising in her chest. Luis seemed oblivious to her tension and continued slicing the ham with a falsely lighthearted tone. Every morning, Noah would ask me, Daddy, when is Mommy coming home? He looked up and smiled at Emma, though a dark obsession flickered beneath his eyes. Now, she's finally home. Clang! Emma slammed her fork down. The clatter of metal on porcelain rang sharply through the silent room. Startled, Noah shrank back and looked nervously at Luis. Where's Lisa? Emma demanded. What did you do to her? Luis's smile didn't fade. He gently patted the boy's head. Don't be scared. Mommy's just too happy. Happy? Emma almost laughed in disgust. She looked at Noah's face, so much like Lisa's, and at Luis's sick performance. The whole scene was nauseating. Luis, she said, voice cold as ice. Do you really think you can fool me like this? Luis's hand paused over the ham. You know exactly whose child this is. She stared straight into his eyes. He's Lisa's son, so why the hell should he call me Mom? The air in the dining room froze solid. Noah blinked in confusion, then suddenly burst into tears. Daddy, does Mommy not like me? Luis finally set down his knife and fork. He calmly wiped the boy's mouth with a napkin, then stood and walked behind Emma. His hand gently rested on her shoulder as he leaned down to whisper, his breath warm against her earlobe. Emma, be good. Don't say these things in front of the child. His voice was tender, sickeningly so. Emma jerked away from his touch. Standing so abruptly the chair behind her toppled over. You can finish this performance yourself. She turned to leave the dining room, but his soft laugh stopped her. Emma, you can't escape. Then he rushed forward and grabbed her. His breath was hot against her neck. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her. The housekeeper, sensing the tension, discreetly took the frightened Noah out of the room. Only the two of them remained. Emma couldn't hold it in. She slapped him across the face. A red mark bloomed on Luis's cheek. His expression darkened. But then, he smiled again, twisted and manic. If Emma doesn't like Noah, then let's have another child. One even cuter than him. He suddenly hoisted her into his arms and began carrying her upstairs. Emma struggled desperately. Luis pressed her down, his weight suffocating. In that moment of despair, she pulled out the hidden knife and drove it into his chest. Bright red blood poured from the wound. Luis stared at her in shock. The door burst open. The last image he saw was Emma running into Fabian's arms, without even sparing him a glance. Only then did he finally understand how Emma had felt. All those years ago, to love someone whose eyes were filled with someone else. In his final moment, he smiled. Emma. I'm sorry. Sorry I didn't protect you when it mattered most.